Hello students, this is a class for BA part first. We will be studying the second part and the concluding part of the poem Thoughts in a Garden, a poem by Andrew Marvell. I am Dr. Anil Dadhij, your English teacher. So we have already done the poem up to this part when the poet was talking about uh, the nature, he was giving allusions about mythological references. And now we move forward and begin the poem from where we left. What wondrous life in this I lead. In this means in the garden. I lead a wondrous life, he exclaims. It's an exclamatory sentence, which means he is enjoying thoroughly. I lead a wonderful life in the garden. Kaise? This stanza is known for its sensuousness. Sensuousness is actually made of senses. When your senses, five senses, are spatially touched by the word pictures, then we call that the poem has an example of sensuousness. So he says, ripe apples. When this word comes in your mind, ripe apples, so you have a picture of beautiful, goodly, ripe apples drop about my head. You start imagining that you are sitting in an apple garden and the ripe apples drop about automatically after ripening above my head. The luscious clusters of the vine, vine, wine means the grapes, अंगूर की बेलें. So the luscious clusters means guchhe. Luscious means very tasty and you can say full of juice, ऐसा. So luscious clusters of wine. Upon my mouth crush their wine. Wine is here actually the extract, the juice. इसके लिए यूज़ किया गया है. वाइन मतलब शराब नहीं. तो देयर वाइन, और यहाँ पे वाइन का मतलब द इंटॉक्सिकेटिंग ज्यूस ऑफ वाइन crush upon my mouth. So this is a beautiful sensuous image of the clusters of wine. The nectarine and curious speech. Nectarine means, nectar is actually food that grow in heaven. Nectar अमृत के लिए यूज़ किया जाता है, विच इज़ वेरी स्वीट. तो नेक्टराइन पीच, पीच इज़ ए फ्रूट. कैसा फ्रूट है? क्यूरियस. क्यूरियस मीन्स वेरी इंटरेस्टिंग, वेरी टेस्टी. तो nectarine and curious speech into my hands themselves to reach means they are so much loaded on the tree that they have bowed down the tree and the poet can touch them, poet can reach them. So curious and nectarine peach into my hands themselves reach, stumbling on melons as I pass. When the poet moves in the garden, what happens? He stumbles on melons. Melons कहते हैं तरबूज को, बड़े बड़े तरबूज हैं. एंड ही स्टम्बल्स ऑन देम. स्टम्बल मतलब लड़खड़ा जाना, गिर जाना, टकरा जाना. तो ही strikes against the melons as he moves forward, ensnared with flowers. Why he is not able to see the melons? Because it is ensnared. जाल बिछा हुआ है. किसका? With flowers. चारों तरफ फूलों का जाल बिछा है, इसलिए he is not able to see the melons. And I fall on grass. So this is a beautiful picturesque scene of the garden, fruit garden. Now he moves forward. Meanwhile the mind, from pleasure less, from less pleasure, withdraws into its happiness. While in this state of garden, mind withdraws into its own happiness. दिमाग from less pleasure comparatively, the bigger pleasure is in the mind. Physical pleasure, that is upon the when you think of the apples, when you think of the wine, grapes, when you think of peach and melons, so and flowers, ये सब क्या है? These are lesser pleasures, lesser pleasures than your intellectual pleasures. So he says mind withdraws into its own happiness. दिमाग थॉट के लेवल पे, नाउ द टाइटल कम्स ए थॉट्स इन ए गार्डन, तो अब वो हायर प्लेजर की तरफ जा रहा है. तो ही सेज द माइंड, माइंड के लिए क्या कहा? दैट ओशन, माइंड इज कंपेयर्ड विद ओशन. ओशन इज इन्फिनिट, एंडलेस, बहुत बड़ा होता है, असीमित होता है, लिमिट्स नहीं है जिसकी कोई. तो माइंड इज ऑल्सो लाइक दैट ओशन where each kind does straight its own resemblance find, where everything finds its own resemblance. Everything is reflected in the mind means whatever you think in your mind, it finds a resemblance. Means you can visualize that, आप उसको visualize कर सकते हैं. Yet फिर भी it creates transcending these, ये जो resemblance है, ये जो images है, what you imagine, उनको transcend करता है mind. Mind is more powerful than the visuals only. So he says it creates transcending these. Transcend means to surpass, उनके पार चले जाने को, किसी चीज़ के पार चले जाने को ट्रांसेंड कहते हैं, सरपास करने को ट्रांसेंड कहते हैं. तो येट इट क्रिएट्स ट्रांसेंडिंग दीज फार अदर वर्ल्ड्स एंड अदर सीज. नई दुनिया, दूसरी दुनिया, दूसरे सीज, उनको इट क्रिएट्स. मीन्स द माइंड कैन क्रिएट्स इट्स ओन थिंग्स. यू सी, we see so many films in which the filmmakers imagine of aliens. They imagine of different, you can say, regions, different galaxies, and the creatures that live there. All these are not real, but they are actually the creative inventions of your mind only, and that is why the poet says it creates, the mind creates, अपने आप क्रिएट कर लेता है, ट्रांसेंड कर देता है किसको? रियल को. These means the real things that you see from your own eyes, and transcending these means you are going beyond these natural things, उससे परे जा करके, and you see far other worlds and other seas means your imaginary worlds, your imaginary seas, annihilating all that is made. Annihilating मतलब ending, ending all that is made to a green thought in a green shade. Whatever you see in the green shade, ये जो हरी छाया है किसकी? पेड़ों की. उसमें जो ग्रीन थॉट्स हैं, ग्रीन मतलब फ्रेश थॉट्स हैं, उन सब को एंड करते हुए यू गो इनटू योर ओन imaginary world. So poet says, I have reached into that world where I am not confined, I am not limited to the physical world immediately surrounding him. उसके तुरंत उसके जो इर्द गिर्द है उससे परे चला गया है. मतलब he is not confined to the apple trees or the grapes or the peach or the melons or the flowers or the trees surrounding him. He has reached into his own imagination which goes beyond all these things. Here at the fountain sliding foot, now he tells you where he is actually sitting. A fountain is flowing, it is sliding. इसके foot पे मतलब down it, बिल्कुल इसके नीचे, foot नीचे होता है तो नीचे, sliding foot पे fountain के he is sitting. और at some fruit trees mossy root, mossy कहते हैं काई जमी हुई, roots जो हैं उनके फ्रूट ट्रीज के बिल्कुल सटके. कास्टिंग द बॉडीज वेस्ट असाइड, और ऐसे पेड़ के जहाँ उसकी जड़ें हैं, मॉसी रूट्स हैं, वहाँ लेटे हुए पोइट क्या कह रहा है? This is beautiful line, you should pay attention to it seriously. Casting the body's vest aside, vest is dress, body's dress, casting the body's dress aside, body is considered to be a dress. बॉडी किसकी ड्रेस है? ऑफ योर सोल, ऑफ योर स्पिरिट, आपकी आत्मा की। तो बॉडी को पुटिंग असाइड, अलग रखते हुए कौन निकल गया है? स्पिरिट हैज कम आउट। तो कास्टिंग असाइड द बॉडीज वेस्ट, माई सोल, बॉडी को परे रखते हुए माई सोल into the boughs does glide, my soul glide, glide means fly smoothly, उड़ रही है मेरी सोल into the boughs, डालियों में, पेड़ की डालियों में, गार्डन के पेड़ की डालियों तक, मतलब he has risen above his physical being there, वहाँ पे in the boughs, पेड़ की डालियों में, like a bird, soul is compared to a bird, तो my soul like a bird sits and sings upon the boughs. Singing is actually a symbol of happiness, expression of happiness. So the spirit sits on the boughs of the tree and sings. Then और उसके बाद wets, wets मतलब sharpen, अपने सिल्वर विंग्स को शार्पन करता है, मतलब हिलाता है। देन वेट्स एंड कॉम्स इट्स सिल्वर विंग्स। सिल्वर इज इम्पोर्टेंट टू नोट, विंग्स कैसे हैं? सिल्वरी विंग्स हैं। वाइट सिल्वर इज एक्चुअली ए सिंबल ऑफ इनोसेंस, पीस एंड हेवनली थिंग्स, supernatural things. So then spirit wets itself and combs its silver wings, मतलब prepares itself for a longer flight. Until prepared for the longer flights, waves in its plumes, plumes कहते हैं feathers को, पंखों को, the various lights come through the feathers, ऐसा। Such was that happy garden state. Now he imagines in the midst of the boughs of the tree, he imagines the happy garden state. Happy garden state कौन सी है? He is actually taking an allusion from Bible. What is there in Bible? In the Bible, it is written that God created first human beings, Adam and Eve, and then he put them, God put them in the Garden of Eden. So that happy garden state, while man there walked without a mate. Actually, God created man only for the first time. So man walked there in the garden without a mate, without a companion. There was no other person. Only Adam was created after a place so pure and so sweet. After a place so pure and so sweet means such a garden, Garden of Eden he is talking about, paradise की बात कर रहा है। तो after such a place which was so pure and so sweet, what other help could yet be meet? What other help could be more appropriate? Meet means suitable or appropriate, मतलब you do not need anything else if you find such a beautiful place to live in. But लेकिन it was beyond a mortal share, because man is mortal. Mortal मतलब नश्वर, मतलब one who has to die ultimately, मरना पड़ेगा जिसको। तो it was beyond a mortal share to wander, means to move there, चलना फिरना, घूमना फिरना, solitary there, solitary मतलब all alone there. It was not his share, it was not his destiny, it was not his fate, it was not in his फॉर्च्यून, भाग्य में नहीं था कि वो अकेला वहाँ घूमता रहे। क्यों? क्योंकि अगर वो वहाँ अकेला रहता तो ही वुड हैव बीन इमॉर्टल। टू वांडर सॉलिटरी देयर, टू पैराडाइजेज इट वर इन वन, टू लिव इन पैराडाइज अलोन। व्हेन मैन लिव्ड अलोन इन पैराडाइज, ही सेज इट वर टू पैराडाइजेज इन वन, दो पैराडाइज था। कैसे? हाउ कम टू पैराडाइजेज? that it was without a mate, and therefore it was a perfect place, and it was garden. You were living in paradise and you were immortal and you did not need even company. It was so pure and sweet, the poet says. And ultimately, he is in a trance like state, जैसे वो बिल्कुल सेमी कॉन्शियस स्टेट में पहुंच गया है पोएट, और he concludes the poem in these words, how well the skillful gardener, यहाँ पे the skillful gardener किसके लिए यूज किया गया है? सिम्बॉलिकली इट इज फॉर गॉड, because only God is the skillful gardener of this universe. How well the skillful gardener drew of flowers and herbs this dial knew. This dial, dial समझते हैं घड़ी का जैसे डायल होता है राउंड वैसा, और ये बना किसका है? फ्लावर्स एंड हर्ब्स का. वेयर फ्रॉम अबोव द माइल्डर सन, जो सन है जो माइल्ड है, माइल्ड मतलब सॉफ्ट, माइल्डर मतलब सॉफ्टर, तो फ्रॉम अबोव द माइल्डर सन, उस माइल्डर सन से भी ऊपर से, वेयर डज थ्रू ए फ्रेग्रेंट जोडियाक रन, माइल्डर सन runs through a fragrant zodiac. Zodiac is actually the path through which the sun makes movement. जो गोल गोल सूरज घूमता है उसको जोडियाक बोलते हैं, सूर्य के पथ को जोडियाक बोलते हैं. तो फ्रेग्रेंट जोडियाक रन, एक्चुअली द पोएट कंपेयर्स द गार्डन विद द जोडियाक, द पाथ थ्रू विच द सन मूव्स. तो फ्रॉम where from above the milder sun does through a fragrant zodiac run. Sun runs through this fragrant zodiac. Actually, this universe is compared with the garden, and just as the sun moves in this zodiac, in the zodiac of the universe, in the same manner as it works, जैसे ये करता है, the industrious bee, just as the sun works there in the zodiac, the industrious bee, industrious means laborious, laborious means hard working, bee, bee मधुमक्खी को कहते हैं, computes its time as well as we. Just as the bee computes its time, we also count time. How could such sweet and wholesome hours be reckoned? Reckoned means evaluated. कैसे उनका मूल्यांकन हो सकता है ऐसे स्वीट आवर्स का, विच आर पास्ड इन द गार्डन. हाउ कुड सच स्वीट आवर्स, होलसम आवर्स, होलसम मीन्स कंप्लीट आवर्स, फुलफिलिंग आवर्स, बी रेकन्ड, बी इवेल्युएटेड. उनको नापा जा सकता है, मापा जा सकता है, उनका इवेल्युएशन किया जा सकता है, परीक्षण किया जा सकता है, बट विद हर्ब्स एंड फ्लावर्स, एक्सेप्ट किनके अलावा, हर्ब्स के अलावा नहीं किया जा सकता, फ्लावर्स के अलावा नहीं किया जा सकता. मतलब वी नीड हर्ब्स एंड फ्लावर्स ओनली टू reckon such beautiful and wholesome hours. And in this manner, the poet attracts our attention to pass time in the garden. This is the completion of the poem. If you have any problem regarding this poem, you can call me, you can WhatsApp me your problems. This is one of the most important poems and you must read it seriously. Thank you.